And that's really our vision here at Deel, is to get millions of people around the world working for the best companies irrespective of their location. You know, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And location should not get in the way of somebody landing their dream job, nor should it get in the way of an organisation finding the best candidate for the role.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Guerrilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Great to be here. And today we have Shannon Karaka with us. How are you, Shannon?
Very well, thank you. A little bit jet lagged after a 3-hour flight, but but all good.
Yeah.
But good to be
early start for you today, no doubt, coming across from Sydney, was it today?
Yeah, from Sydney, 6 a.m. this morning, got up and trying to get through customs in Sydney is a nightmare. So just made the flight, but good to be here in New Zealand. It's been a few years as well, so it's good to be back on home soil.
Yeah, well, welcome home. Maybe you can fill listeners in where you fit into this big wide world of tech within the Asia Pacific or Australia, New Zealand sort of region?
Sure, yeah. So in my current role, I'm the country leader and head of expansion at Deel for Australia and New Zealand. Joined the company just over a year ago as the second employee in APAC, but now we've scaled the team. I believe the latest number is just over 50 across Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. Great to be here, officially launching the market in New Zealand as well. It's been a long time coming. And I spent the past over 10 years working for a variety of technology companies, fell into a fintech out of university, and I've been very fortunate and privileged to have worked at some of the greats, Google, Salesforce, WeWork as well, and now Deel. So I think, working in technology businesses and getting to be a part of, the innovation and the future has become a passion of mine over time. And it's great to be part of such a disruptive technology in the industry and in a world where the global workforce has shifted to working remote, and we've seen that evolve to work from anywhere now.
Yeah,
and we're playing in that space and facilitating that. So
it's really cool. Well, definitely looking forward to delving in and hearing about Deel. Also want to thank our show partners, which as of I think a week or so ago, Deel's come on board. So thank you to 2 Degrees, Vodafone, Spark, HP, Guerrilla Technology, and Deel for supporting New Zealand Tech Podcast and really the broader tech and innovation ecosystems here in New Zealand. So great to be working with you. Great to be able to have you on the show for a bit of an intro. But let's jump in to start with a few tech topics that have caught the attention this week. Now, one of those is we've learnt that Google, or I guess Alphabet, is the bigger entity, as with really everyone, Silicon Valley and beyond, has been dealing with some pretty interesting times going through COVID, and we've been hearing about the chief executive Sundar Pichai talking about this need for the workforce at Google to get more efficient, which I think is quite interesting. Specifically, to become 20% more efficient. And many of us will remember Google with their 20% rule around enabling staff to spend sort of 20% of their time or a day a week, working on sort of side projects and things in terms of their developers and people within those areas of invention and innovation. And, quite a number of things, came out of that. In fact, I think, if I recall correctly, Gmail was one of those things back in the day that came out of that. Seeing the headlines that their internal R&D group called Area 120 cancelling half its projects. One of the projects that I read about was the Google made upcoming Chromebook. That one's been sort of kicked to the curb. So it's quite interesting, I guess, looking in the journey of Google as a very innovative company that have created so many things. And if you look back, probably just as many things that they've cancelled in terms of projects, maybe more than those that have kind of made it through. But they still, I guess, continue to do some really impressive work, and they've got that scale, that talent, the funding to be able to keep doing new things. But at some point, there has to be sort of a limit, doesn't there, in terms of how much money you can throw at these things, especially when I guess to a degree, we hear about concerns of recession, ongoing, and a lot of tech companies, certainly some of the big companies have already made moves. Microsoft have laid off sort of sub 1% of their workforce, but there are moves afoot within these big tech players to make sure that they're operating in a way that sort of, I guess, they consider responsible to their shareholders, right? So this looks like part of that they're culling stuff that they just don't think is actually ever going to turn into something.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I was actually fortunate enough to work for Google for a couple of years, many years ago now. And I think Google does a really good job at retaining employees. I remember working there, getting fed breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. They had a barista on site, snacks for days, whatever you'd like. And I think, to your point, this is a reflection of the climate that we're living in. Google has shareholders that they need to report to, and right now it's looking like that we're heading towards a recession. So it's probably a decision to get in front of that, because the alternative potentially is to let go of employees. And we're seeing that in the market across the board right now. So that's what I think. But ultimately, Google's still a fantastic company to work for, regardless. And I've still got some friends that work there and enjoying the variety of benefits that they offer their staff as well.
Yeah. Now, another company that's it's a pretty big player, been around a lot longer than Google. Adobe have been in the news over the last few days in relation to acquiring Figma. And for those that aren't familiar, Figma make fantastic software that gets used, I guess, by designers and web developers and so on to things from building wireframes of new, whether it's a mobile app or websites and other things, very, very broadly used software. In fact, I was reading something just in the last month or two, comparing Figma to their competitors and how they managed to outmaneuver competitors that possibly were had the chance to maybe outmaneuver Figma, but Figma has ended up doing better and really commanding the biggest slice of the market. So with Adobe, with this move from Adobe, $20 billion US, that's a pretty big bet. I think it's going to be quite fascinating to see how things shake out. Do the other players, what do they do? Will they be able to use this then to sort of maybe get that attention because they become the smaller players? Figma's sort of now part of Adobe. From Adobe's announcement, they're really sort of talking about leaving Figma alone. But you always wonder how long do these sorts of things go on for before they want to make some changes, big or small. Do they pull Figma, which today I think you can use for smaller projects for free to some degree, depending on which capabilities that you might need and so on. Is that something that will disappear? And maybe the not too distant future. Does Figma, to use Figma, will you effectively need an Adobe subscription in future, which I'm sure would likely be a higher cost than what folks are sort of spending today, which creates I guess an interesting dilemma for some organisations at the probably bigger end of town. It's not so much of a big deal, but for I guess a lot of those independent, smaller software developers and web shops and so on that might use Figma today, I can imagine there's going to be a bit of interest in what maybe those smaller competitors are doing, unless they're already they're already in a position where they've got Adobe licenses and subscriptions, and actually it's not going to impact them at all. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it shakes out, right?
I think what's really interesting about this acquisition is that it's happening now. Quite a sizable acquisition, $20 billion. When the global economy is leading towards recession, it demonstrates there is still money being thrown about. The impact to end users, to your point, I think Adobe potentially, it could be a strategy for them to be more dominant in this space, of course. And with end users like software developers and engineers that you referred to, I'm sure there are other competitors that are more affordable that they could explore on the back of this. I liken the acquisition to Salesforce's strategy. Acquisition spree while I was working there, acquiring, various businesses, and some of those businesses were integrated into Salesforce's ecosystems, others were not. But it's about tiering the solution to accommodate for a variety of end users, from software engineers all the way up through to enterprise as well. So I think we might see a tiering of the solution as that's integrated into the Adobe stack. Yeah.
And Adobe have had Adobe XD, which has sort of been somewhat considered, competing product to Figma. So it looks as though that has already, been winding down for some time. Certainly not a product I've been following too closely. So yeah, interesting times ahead. Now, also on the, I guess, sort of very much software related as a lot of stuff is these days. Really interesting news on some research that's been going on between the University of Michigan in the US and then the Zhejiang University in China, looking at video conferencing software. I think the references I've read have been mentioning probably Zoom more than anything, but realistically, this particular concern really could be relevant to to any platform, and it's focusing in on how folks like me who are wearing glasses when they're on a video call, are they inadvertently revealing confidential information via the screen reflections onto their glasses, which I think is just fascinating. We've moved to this world where all of us are doing video calls, and it's just become so the norm. And now we read actually this could be a bit of a drama from a security perspective. So it raised some questions, and what I've read online sort of talks about different font sizes and camera resolution. So you've got to have it talks about text as small as 10 millimeters being able to on your screen be reflected back and picked up by a 720p webcam. Now I think there's a degree to which their research is going to need to be modernised, because we actually see more and more webcams that are full HD or 1080p, and there's even a bit of 4K starting to come through in terms of webcams. But they're saying text of that size can be reflected back and possibly picked up if a call is being recorded in some way. So Yeah, quite fascinating. I guess the message is be very careful of what confidential data you have on your screen, or what anything that might embarrass you on your screen if you're wearing glasses. So you don't have that challenge, but there's plenty of us that do, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting dilemma. And to your point, since the inception of COVID, we've moved to a world where, as you've said, video conferencing and Google Meet, Zoom, WebEx, etc., has become normal. And I think sometimes things like this can be overlooked, and it's fascinating to see now that it's being spoken about. It's a consideration that I guess you need to keep in mind. And I know certain providers over time have had security scares, so I'm sure equally they'll be aware of this and implementing new approaches to ensure that this doesn't happen, into the future as well. But yeah, really interesting. Yeah, fortunately, I don't have glasses on, so I haven't been impacted by that. But you might have to invest in some contact lenses, Paul.
Well, I think I already use anti-reflective coating and so on. So,
yeah.
And I have noticed actually being on some calls that I had some different glasses. I had a spare pair, probably didn't have a reflective coating on it, and must have been on maybe it was a recorded call or podcast or something that was being videoed or TV, and yeah, it was kind of really obvious, like, oh wow, that's really reflective, and so it is something to consider, and maybe the reflective, having the anti-reflective coating is all you need, but certainly
answer.
Something we'll be following, and I can imagine if that's getting a bit of attention, we'll probably see a little bit more of a focus on it, and no doubt some either bad scenarios in terms of data getting leaked or some embarrassing scenarios maybe, particularly as we see those sort of higher definition cameras becoming more of the norm. Now also in the news this week, new cameras from GoPro first of all. And then interesting to see that, DJI, who have been, we've known them for their drones, have been really trying to edge in and take a slice of that market. And so when the new GoPro Hero 11 was announced, and there's two different products this time. In fact, I think it's kind of 2.5 products. They've got a smaller version of the camera, and then there's one that they're offering that has some extra accessories and so on as far as GoPro goes. But there seems to be I just from the bits and pieces that I've looked at so far, and haven't had hands on the new GoPro yet. But have regularly tried out and utilised both the sort of GoPro products and the DJI. I think GoPro seem to be, from the way I've seen it so far, more committed to supporting their products over a longer term in terms of firmware improvements and fixes, even to the fact that one of the DJI cameras I had, they stopped releasing updates for it while it still had a relatively sort of major bug in it that was impacting folks, whereas GoPro seemed to really support their devices over a longer period, and then I guess this is maybe the contentious piece is that GoPro are moving more to a subscription type model. So I have the GoPro subscription, and what that allows me to do is not to have to stress about how much content that I've got from a GoPro device, because it just sits in their cloud. And so you pay your your monthly, your annual fee, and you've got unlimited storage of your GoPro footage, so you can go nuts and have multiple cameras. You can record loads of footage, 360 180 degree, just standard footage, whatever you like, and it's no stress, and it's not kind of crazy money to be on that. So that I think last I read they'd passed sort of 2 million subscribers. So that
Crazy.
kind of puts them into quite a good, good position with that recurring revenue, as well as the new cameras sort of continuing to come out, on an annual basis, much like our iPhones and Android phones. What's your take on on where these things are landed? Because there's so much we can do on our smartphones. Do you use a sort of action camera yourself? Or you more just use what's built into your iPhone, your Android?
Yeah, I think when GoPro burst onto the scene 10 plus years ago, it must have been. I think it was a massive hit across Australia and New Zealand. I personally had one. I would say back then I was in their target market as well. Used to go out in the outdoors quite a lot. And then if you look at the way that the Apple iPhone has evolved over time, having two devices almost becomes a little bit less practical. And for me personally, iPhone, so easy to take them around.
You've already got it with
you,
you, right?
and
You've already got it with you. It's a big advantage.
That's the thing. You're
Yeah.
using it for so many other things.
Yeah.
Plus, it's got the capability of the iPhone now is far superior to what it was back then. And they're quite durable devices. So that's my own personal preference. But it's interesting to hear that GoPro's gone down the software as a service route with the cloud-based subscription, because I think about, when you're out in the outdoors, kayaking, hiking, whatever it might be, if you damage or lose the GoPro, you've still got all of that, all of those photos, all of those videos backed up in the cloud. So I think it's a smart approach from them. And
Yeah, and also their subscription sort of covers you for, I guess there's a degree in which they're trying to edge in and sort of take sales off the retailers, right? You can still buy a GoPro through a retailer, but it's cheaper to buy it off them with your subscription. So they've kind of got now the retail chains help them sort of launch the brand, and it continues probably to be a very important part for them. But once you're on board, they I think they're hoping you will buy off them, and they tempt you with the pricing. And with that subscription, just wondering what it's costing in New Zealand now. See if I can have a look. But with that subscription, you also get a kind of a level of
customer support,
insurance, like an insurance. So you damage or break your GoPro, then you've got a kind of low cost route to getting it fixed or replaced, sort of thing as well. So yes, it does seem like a pretty smart move, on their front.
Well, if you look at consumers these days as well, and the amount of applications that you subscribe to that you don't even notice, it's like a gym membership almost. You sign up and you forget about it. So smart approach from them. Interested to see the way that GoPro will evolve into the future as well. If they'll incorporate AR or VR into their stack as well, remains to be seen.
Yeah. So the two models, Hero 11 Black and a Hero 11 Mini, mostly does away with the screen to a large degree, although there is a little bit of a screen there. Seems to be quite a big step up in terms of running time, and there's a few other areas. But for those that are looking at a camera, we're sort of comparing what's available this year. I think they'll still sell the Hero 10. We're sort of seeing similar thing there to Apple and others, where you can buy last year's model at a lower cost.
So they get you.
DJI seem to sort of be pushing in with, and I'm sure people will have their sort of preferences as we see between brands, but my take is probably a slightly sort of lesser product in terms of some of the capabilities. In terms of like I think the DJI are sort of maxing out at lower resolution video and photos. And as I say, probably some differences there in terms of their firmware updates, but DJI are also coming in at a really slick sort of price. So it keeps it pretty competitive, I think, for the next few years ahead. Of course, we shouldn't forget, if you're talking a little bit of a battle between the two brands, that of course GoPro They made their effort at launching drones. Didn't go too well. They pulled out of that. I guess they're kind of hopeful that DJI might not stick around in cameras, and I guess that'll be something we see over the next few years. But I wouldn't imagine it would make sense for DJI to pull out of that space. But who knows? Depends whether it's really profitable for them or not.
Yeah, I think GoPro is such a dominant player. It'd be interesting to see if DJI will be able to create some market share and steal from the GoPro audience. But yeah, what do you use your GoPro for, Paul?
Oh, it's a good question. My son filmed when Tesla first sort of launched their semi-autonomous capability for retrieving your car in a car park. We were, got some good footage at the mall, footage on road trips. The one bit I'm actually kicking myself that I guess I dabble with sort of getting the footage. I was in the US. It was around sort of Christmas time, and we were on a road trip from San Francisco to Yosemite.
Yep.
And looked up in the sky and was like,
beautiful.
What the heck is that in the sky? And there was this it was like, what is that? And later I went on Twitter and found out it was a SpaceX launch going from Los Angeles that, where we were, you could see the whole thing going off and yeah, I don't think I captured that. It was like, that would have been really, really cool to have had that footage. So and during that trip, we went to so many different places, and so we're wearing GoPro through some very incredible parts of sort of the national parks and things like that. It's really cool to get footage and just strap it onto your body, and you get different bits of content. Definitely good for attaching to the vehicle and so on, as long as you attach it securely. That can be a little bit stressful as to whether a camera's going to fall off your car. But yeah, capture wildlife and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, lots of uses, I think, for this sort of tech. And you don't necessarily want to be attaching your phone to the car or attaching your phone for all the footage. But there's definitely that crossover, right? And I think there are it just depends what you do. I've got friends who do a lot of surfing, and some of the footage that they get
on their surfboards
is just off the hook. And you think, you probably wouldn't be attaching your phone to try and do that, right? So
you're right. I think New Zealand's such a great country for the outdoors as well. Such beautiful terrain and landscape. So if I was to see a SpaceX rocket go off, I know I would have just gotten the iPhone out and
we were looking and just scratching our heads as to what it was, because it was kind of this crazy shape in the sky, and it wasn't until we got to our hotel later and I'm
realised
having a look
what it was
on Twitter and everyone's saying what it was. And
probably
it was
thinking it was a UFO or something over in the US.
It was a crazy shape. Now I'm curious. I want to look up what that one was. SpaceX launch.
When was this? A few years ago. It was
17.
A few years back now.
It's all a bit of a blur. Sometime in the last.
I think the past few years has been a blur, hasn't it?
Probably about past. Here it is. 23rd of December.
Oh wow!
And it's like kind of this balloon shaped thing with a sort of long tail behind the rocket. So because it was reasonably dark, it was kind of this luminescent sort of
in the evening
view behind the rocket, I guess. And it was quite crazy. Yeah, it says here people were seeing it throughout, from Southern California, Arizona, and it was a Falcon 9 launch. But that was their 18th launch for the year.
It's probably normal for them over there. They're used to seeing Milky Way in the sky.
Yeah. But the pace of those things has just it's gone nuts in terms of what they're doing now. I can't quite remember how many they're up to, but I think this year they're gonna. Well, they already broke their previous record, about a month ago for the number of launches. So,
Crazy.
That's another incredible firm doing some cool stuff. Now, one last thing before we sort of delve into Deel, we were talking about GoPro and this sort of subscription element. Another company that's been in the news is a company that you might not expect to be relying on software fees as a growing chunk of their revenue. John Deere. We know them for their tractors and what they have on the farms in terms of harvesters and so on. And they have, it sounds like 10% of their revenues are expected to be through sort of software by 2030. So that's something that they're very much sort of scaling. And I guess as time goes on, they will invest into the software that makes these what once were very old school things, or not something that we would think of as tech innovation, unless you're looking back at what tractors looked like sort of, 70, 80 years ago. But here we are in a time where vehicles are very much crossing into that software front.
I think it's a very interesting play from John Deere to do that, and looking at organisations that are trying to forecast revenues. With software as a service, you can commit businesses to multi-year deals and gives you visibility into run rate for the coming years. So, interesting space. I'd be also interested to find out the type of software that they're implementing. Is it to manage their equipment, I'm assuming?
Well, I think they've got autonomous driving capabilities already on the farm to varying degrees.
Okay.
And I think what we'll see is that will increase. And some of what I hear is that farmers actually they quite enjoy sort of sitting on their tractor and cruising. It's kind of it's sort of quiet time and so on. But there's a need for more and more to be done, less and less people available who maybe want to do these types of jobs, and so the more autonomy that comes through, and of course, we've seen a huge change over a period of decades, from using animals to pull, plows and so on to where we've really technology has played an ever increasing role, and now as we look more to software, I think that will be a continuous change.
Yeah, I think John Deere's aware and recognises the importance of innovation, and that has been the trend over the past couple of decades. So it sounds like they're at the forefront of that and thinking about the future ahead.
Their name seems to keep coming up.
Yeah, those poor farmers though, Going to be out of a job soon though.
I think there's certainly that interest in the farming sector of being able to hand over certain things to technology, and some areas maybe the technology moves slower than some folks might like. In other areas, maybe it moves too fast at times. But it's inevitable, isn't it, that the innovation will continue.
Yeah, for sure. I think self-driving technology is obviously going to drive efficiencies within that industry, so it makes a lot of sense. That's for sure.
Now, tell us about Deel. How long since you joined Deel, and how big was was the business? And then I'm kind of keen to having a bit of a taste for that growth, to delve into what Deel's all about.
Sure thing, yeah. So I joined Deel back in July 2021, and I was hired originally as the second employee in APAC. We hired another head of expansion in Singapore, and had about 1 or 2 months with him until he decided to leave the business. So it's a small period there where I was left on my own, but I was hired as the 198th employee globally. And what's crazy, if you look at Deel's trajectory and what we've expanded to now, Deel globally has more than 1,400 employees. So I think that growth over that period of time is uncommon. And also across Australia and now New Zealand, we've scaled the team from myself to more than 50 employees across Australia and New Zealand. So it's been a lot of hard work, to say the least, and a few more grey hairs on my head as well. But look, it's really great to be in New Zealand. We've been operating here for just over a year now. We've grown our customer, our partner base, and it's great to be achieving another milestone with our official New Zealand launch that's happening tomorrow. And yeah, on a personal note, I'm originally from New Zealand as well, so it's good to be here and to reconnect with fellow Kiwis and to reconnect with Kiwi businesses as well, and to help them overcome challenges that they're facing right now in the New Zealand economy. So yeah, that's a little bit of context about our story. Going into what we actually do, Deel is the best way for companies to be able to hire, pay, and manage their global teams.
We've seen that big change, really, haven't we? Particularly during COVID, where, I mean, here in New Zealand, we've only got so many people. There's been a sort of an outward flow of people rather than the usual inward flow of talent, and so that need to be looking at hiring offshore and other locations has. Yeah, I think it's massively sort of flipped over this past couple of years. So it's quite interesting timing. What are what can you tell us in terms of that sort of aspect where New Zealand businesses? What are the challenges you see they're dealing with? Like, do you know what the numbers are in terms of the outflow? People sort of leaving the country, because that's what creates this sort of talent crunch, right?
Yeah, I think on the back of COVID. New Zealand obviously closed their borders, and that fueled new problems to solve. And New Zealand's in the midst of an unprecedented workforce crisis. The New Zealand Reserve Bank has come out and said that there are more than double the job vacancies than there are those unemployed. And recent estimates highlighting that there are more than 10,000 workers or jobs that remain unfilled in the IT sector due to a lack of qualified candidates. And then if you look at the statistics from Statistics New Zealand, recent figures highlighting that the net migration outflow from New Zealand dates back to March 2021. And over that period, it's ranged from 1,500 New Zealanders up to 15,000 New Zealanders over time. So if that continues, obviously that creates a serious problem that New Zealand companies need to face. And I think there's been a lot of pent-up demand for New Zealanders wanting to go home to visit their families in overseas markets, but also young New Zealanders as well, wanting to work overseas for a period of time and do their whole overseas experiences things. So I think the talent crunch right now is being felt by New Zealand businesses, and that's a consistent pain that we hear. And our advice to them is that a change of strategy is required, especially in the short term, to fill those gaps. And what we're categorised as a global employer of record organisation. And what that essentially means is, say, a New Zealand company would like to hire someone in a different country, but they don't have the infrastructure to offer full-time employment. They don't have an entity set up, nor do they want to go through the process of incorporating, because it takes 6 to 9 months. It can be quite an expensive exercise to go down. And there are varying payroll and compliance obligations that need to be maintained. What Deel can do is employ that individual on behalf of that company and assume liability for them and all of the payroll and compliance obligations that are required by law.
And you've got all of the sort of technology pieces, right? Because there have been ways to hire people in other markets, sort of, where you hire through another company and so on, and that's been around in varying forms for some time, but not necessarily very accessible to smaller firms and startups and so on. But you've kind of built the technology platform to be able to do that quite quickly. Maybe you can sort of speak to the foundations of the business, because this is a Silicon Valley startup, is it?
Yeah, that's right. So the co-founders, Alex Boisiz and Shuo Wang, met at MIT back in 2019, and they were working at a previous startup, going through the process of trying to hire contractors overseas, and while going through that process, quickly discovered how difficult it was to navigate international labour law, corporate tax structures, payroll ecosystems that vary country to country and are constantly changing as well. So set out to solve those challenges through software, and they built a global hiring platform initially to solve that problem of being able to hire contractors and payroll them compliantly across 150 countries around the world. And our value proposition is baked into 3 key components. The first is compliance. Deel has gone through the process of incorporation across 90 countries around the world.
I'm struggling to get my head around that, because Deel's only been around, 20? I think it's Wikipedia tells me 2018, and I'm sure Wikipedia details aren't probably perfectly accurate, but in a really short space of time to establish operations in in all of these countries and start, scale to actually be able to make that work, right?
Yeah, I think Deel from the beginning, was constantly thinking about how to evolve the solution to offer more, products to our customers and solve new challenges that they have. Many of the organisations that we work with in New Zealand prefer to offer full-time employment. So Deel went through a process, an entity opening spree over a couple of years, and because of that, we're able to offer full-time employment across 90 countries around the globe right now. We've scaled from a handful of employees to more than 1,400 across 75 countries. Deel now serves more than 9,000 customers around the globe, and one of the fastest growing companies to achieve the $100 million ARR milestone.
So that's
annual recurring revenue. That's right. One of the fastest companies in the world to go from 1 million to 100 million ARR. This is a reflection of the challenges that we're able to solve for our clients on a daily basis. Speaking to certain segments that we support in small to medium business, we're seeing organizations leverage Deel because they want to expand into a new market and test a new hire and don't want to go through the process of setting up an entity, which can be expensive. If you don't have the in-house resources to support that, sometimes you get unstuck with certain penalties or whatever it might be. So this is a really frictionless way for them to be able to hire or expand into a new country, test the market, and over time, as they build out the go-to-market, as they grow the business in that particular jurisdiction, they can go ahead and incorporate and directly hire those employees over time. Yeah. We're also seeing organisations struggling with certain types of talent. The shortfall in the tech sector at the moment, many New Zealand companies are looking to other markets around the globe to solve that problem. And what's interesting about the data that we have is out of the top 5 common roles New Zealand companies are hiring right now, the top 4 are product-based or technology-based, with software engineers, 3D modelers, software designers, software developers occupying the top 4 spots for New Zealand companies, which again is a reflection of the climate that we're living in.
So is that what you're seeing in terms of, those that are using Deel? Because you've been operating, I guess quietly here in New Zealand for the last 12 months. You're seeing that's the sort of interest that you're seeing as well?
I'd say the use cases are 3 consistent use cases that we're seeing. Organisations looking to solve a talent shortfall and are forced into a position where they need to consider the global talent pool but don't know where to start. That's one key use case that we're seeing. The second is mobility. So more and more New Zealand companies exploring work from anywhere initiatives in an attempt to retain their employees. They might not have an entity set up in that country, but they want to retain that individual because they're really important to the business. They spend a lot of time developing them. That individual has IP that they want to retain, and they want to offer the employee the benefit of being able to work from their home country or work from overseas for a period of time. So that's another common use case. They're leveraging Deel as the employer of record to retain the employee, giving them the benefit of being able to work from overseas, but also enabling that customer to retain that employee as well. And I'd say the third most common use case is the expansion into new markets, looking to test a new market for the first time. They might have found an amazing candidate that's ambitious. They might have been trying to find them in Australia or New Zealand for a period of time, but have been unsuccessful and have found that candidate in another market that they don't currently support. So we can provide them with the mechanism to be able to compliantly hire and payroll that individual, with the eventual goal of potentially bringing them into New Zealand once they've been through the visa process.
Yep.
So that's another common use case that we're seeing.
Oh, that's quite interesting. And are there any clients that you can tell us about? I'm picking. There'll be quite a leaning towards sort of startups who are needing to hire a lot of talent at pace. Would be one of the areas, but probably a bit of a mix. So can you tell us a little bit about who those types of businesses are and any examples that you can share?
Yeah, for sure. I think New Zealand, and looking at our customer base here, predominantly technology businesses. We're seeing a real variety from startups to scale-ups to more mature technology businesses here, but an organisation that comes to mind is Lawview. And what's interesting about the use case is they're leveraging Deel to address talent shortfalls here in New Zealand. So hiring technology-based hires, and not only just as full-time employees, they're also giving their talent abroad optionality and employing them as contractors as well, based on what their preferences are. And the use case for them is to address a talent shortfall. They've been through a lengthy recruitment process here, and certain types of hires they can't find. So they're left with no other option but to consider the global talent pool. And this has significantly expanded their options, but also democratizes job opportunities for talent abroad as well. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've got some incredible startups, and certainly LawView is one that many will be familiar with. And yeah, I certainly keep hearing it, across startups, across tech firms, but a range of firms as their challenges with being able to get the talent that they need locally, and also those that have been impacted through resignations during this period. The Great Resignation term sort of being kicked around out there, and interesting hearing the different challenges and the different stories. And I mean, in many ways, it puts our local organisations at risk if we don't manage to address it. And as much as we can, hiring locally is really, really good, but it doesn't always fit. And some businesses, and we've had this happen, my own business during, between lockdowns and so on, where we saw one case somebody want to head back overseas. Yeah, it was, that creates its own sort of challenge in terms of, well, if you want to keep employing them, what does that look like? So, nice to know that the options are getting a little bit easier. And where do you sort of see Deel going over the years ahead? When I think of companies that you can hire contractors and staff through as kind of an in between layer, it probably does vary a little bit in terms of what their service offerings are. You expecting to sort of grow what's available in the market through Deel in terms of those services and capabilities?
Innovation is always top of mind for us here. We began as a solution that supported contractors around the globe. That's evolved into supporting full-time employees as well. The next iteration of Deel will be standalone global payroll, because in many of the cases, when an organisation leverages employer of record to hire people overseas, there is a certain turning point where it makes more sense for them to incorporate and to hire those employees directly.
Yep.
And we offer a standalone payroll solution to support that moving forward, so they don't have to change payroll systems. Beyond that, we're always continuing to think about the new challenges that organisations need to solve for. Things like office space, for example, or remote hardware stack. Yes, we can provide you with a platform to compliantly hire and pay contractors and employees around the globe. But have you thought about where are they going to work? Do you need an office space solution? Are they going to be hybrid? Are they going to be working fully remote? Alongside that, what remote and hardware stack do they need to be able to do their jobs effectively? So these are components that will be introduced over the coming months. We recently announced the acquisition of PayGroup, which is an ASX-listed company, and that will be finalised early November, but also acquiring an organisation called LegalPad, and what they do is they help with visas, so visa processing in the US, which is extremely important and difficult to navigate as well. So constantly thinking about the ways that we can iterate and evolve the product to make worldwide workforce reality. And that's really our vision here at Deel, is to get millions of people around the world working for the best companies irrespective of their location. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not, and location should not get in the way of somebody landing their dream job, nor should it get in the way of an organisation finding the best candidate for the role as well. So I think this would be the next evolution of globalisation, the democratisation of job opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, it seems like a really disruptive business, and it's going to be interesting to see how things sort of flow out and evolve. Certainly seems to have been moving very, very quickly, and I guess we've seen that with with a range of sort of tech startups that have grown very, very quickly, the Ubers and Airbnbs of this world. So always fascinating to watch that journey, and we'll be looking forward to following that growth story. What was the figure in terms of what's the current sort of valuation of the of the business.
Yeah, Deel's currently valued at $5.5 billion and Series D valuation. So I think what's uncommon about the valuation is the amount of time it's taken us to get to this point. Like we spoke about, Deel was founded back in 2019, and over the past 3.5 years, we've scaled to a $5.5 billion valuation, which once again, I think is a reflection of the global acceptance of remote work and the evolving acceptance of work from anywhere. And I think access to new technologies like Zoom and Slack and also Deel makes it even more acceptable and possible for people to work from anywhere. So I think looking into the future's bright for us here at Deel. We will continue to evolve the offering to address new challenges that our customers face, for sure. But yeah, a lot of hard work to get to this point. There's a lot of hard work ahead of us as well.
Yeah. Now, for anyone who's kind of curious and think, well, okay, we would like to investigate this a little bit more. How hard are the processes that folks need to jump through? If they do want to look at using Deel's services or comparing Deel to other offerings that might be out there in the market, what are the hoops? How hard is it to actually go through the process of being able to onboard somebody through your platform?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say if there's anybody out that is looking to expand into a new country or maybe relocate an employee from New Zealand to another country or maybe to address a talent shortfall here in New Zealand and has found an amazing candidate that you'd like to hire overseas, here at Deel, the process is very simple. Signing up for an account is free, and you can create a contract, issue that contract, onboard the employee and hire them. And that process can be done within 10 minutes. Through a single interface. So we've productized that whole workflow, which can take months and months and months of work if you don't have the in-house resource. Here at Deel, you can sign up for an account and get up and running pretty much immediately. And our solution is built on delivering a seamless experience, not only for our clients, but also the end user, the employee or contractor as well.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Oh, thanks for sharing that. And Deel, just DEEL.com, right? That's where folks can go to find you.
Correct, yep. Deel.com, DEEL.com.
Yep.
And I'd say for anyone out there that's exploring global hiring for the first time and does not know where to start, we recently published our Global Hiring Toolkit, which will give you oversight and insight into what are the legal and payroll obligations that I need to consider before I decide, yes, I'm going to hire this person. You can compare one country to another. We've also got a global hiring guide that speaks to all of the benefits and payroll obligations that are required for that particular jurisdiction. So it's a great starting point if you are exploring global hiring for the first time. And of course, we're always available for a conversation as well.
Yep. So you're probably reachable on LinkedIn, are you?
Reachable on LinkedIn, reachable via email, reachable via my own team here across New Zealand. So there's a few different avenues for sure.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, all the best, for expansion in New Zealand.
Thank you,
That's
Paul.
great.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah. Anything else we've missed? Anything we wanted to squeeze in there?
No, I think we've covered it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
great.
great. Excellent. Well, thanks everyone for listening in to the New Zealand Tech Podcast this week. Thanks, Shannon, for joining us. And, of course, thank you to our show partners, Vodafone, Spark, 2 Degrees, HP, Gorilla Technology, and now Deel. So, thanks, everyone. Catch you next week.
Thank you, Paul. Pleasure to be here. Cheers.
Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.